Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Heartwell Dev stream, the live stream series where I continue to develop this adorable Souls-like action RPG with platform mechanics and multiple endings. And if you find these dev streams interesting or helpful, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and boop that bell button to stay notified. Now, when we previously left off, we were actually in the middle of drawing some more attack animations. We finished the animations for the... I believe that was the Thunder Blessed, though I'll double check that. No, the Windbreaker, that's right. The Windbreaker. And then we started working on some animations for the sides. Now, the initial plan for tonight was to continue working on attack animations. And while we will probably get to that, I do, there is something else I want to at least try to do earlier on if we can. And that has to do with how the lore bits are being created. Also, hello, Jay! Thank you so much for dropping by! How's it going? Also, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. I really, really do appreciate it. Jay says, more weapon animation sprites. What's the current weapon count at? Great question. So, let's see. I mean, obviously, the total weapon count we're aiming for is 60, but in terms of how many we've drawn for, so we obviously have the 4 that are currently in the demo. So, the fists, the axe, the tomahawks, and the rocks. But we also have, right now, we have the sword, the staff, the spade, the spear, skeleton key, the gravity lance, Zompaton, ice pick, electro whip, tar shells, Q-nice, flare gauntlets, icicle, landmine, hammer storms, windbreaker, frost ray, harpoons, and cyclamore. So that's 19 ones that we have drawn just here on Strem, plus the 4 that we currently have. So I'd say the total right now is 23, but that's just at base animations. Obviously, there's going to be a whole process of implementing them and stuff like that. But with that being said, there is one, I mean, I guess I'll posit this to you, chat. So currently, the way lore bits work in Heartwell right now is that, I'll try to demonstrate this just to see if it'd be worthwhile to work on this stream. So just give me a second. So, in Heartwell, a lore bit currently cannot be collected. Well, sorry, the UI for XP being earned and a lore bit being active actually shares some animations with this. So, for example, let's say I open up this this lore bit here. All right. So I have this open, and everything looks pretty normal. You know, lore bits happening. Now I defeat an enemy, and things are pretty normal. You know, we defeat an enemy. That looks all good. But an interesting thing happens if okay, so let's let me demonstrate. So if an interesting thing happens here if we actually finish a lore bit and then defeat an enemy at close to the same time. So what'll happen with the UI is this. So let's say I'm fighting this thing, I'm reading the lore bit, I finish it. As you can see, some weird nonsense has happened. So first of all, I believe that counted for wisdom XP, so that's good. But as you see, it's hit the little wisdom XP thing being created. So essentially, the XP display overrided the lore bit. However, something that can be a little bit more jarring is if this were to happen in a situation where we actually have defeated an enemy, but then start reading the lore bit. So this probably isn't the best spot to do this at. We need a spot with an enemy that's like relatively close to a lore bit, like right here. So let's defeat this battle real quick. Just to demonstrate. So as you can see, I was spamming E right there. You can't actually start reading a lore bit while the XP is currently going up, and that's because they share, so this UI actually uses some animation frames to help with displaying certain things like the XP counter going up or the lore bit's wisdom XP gain thing. But that leads to those inconsistencies where, like, you could be in a situation where you're fighting some enemies and you want to just grab a lore bit really quick, but you can't until that XP counter has gone down. So my question for you, chat, is it worthwhile for me to essentially create a separate object for the wisdom at speed collected, so that way they can kind of be collected independently of whether the player's fighting enemies or not? So like it wouldn't matter that much if you're playing normally, but if you're trying to go through an area quickly, it might become noticeable. So that was my question, is whether that would be at least worthwhile to try and pursue a solution for, since the lore bit codes, it's not the most complicated thing in the world, but it's definitely not trivial either. If not, then we'll get back into working on the sides. So for now, though, let's take a look at that code. Yeah. So the way it works is the healing charge UI is used kind of as a counter of sorts for different animations. And these different animations are the way to let either at speed be provided, or in the case of lore bits, as you can see down here, uses a wisdom at speed instance value to keep track of which lore bit is being read. The question becomes if it is worthwhile to dissociate that, or if that's something more so for a later date at this point. Let's see here. I think the first step would probably just be to document all the areas where this is used. And it's tricky because you can't just look at it from the perspective of clicking this button to highlight where all of these are used initially, because in some areas it creates an instance value that's then used elsewhere. Alright, well, I think I'll probably leave that for later. Today's, well, obviously today's stream was supposed to be a weapon animation stream. So let's continue with that. Jay says, your first thought is for the lore is dialogue to disappear if you enter combat. 1, to avoid UI funkiness, and 2, so you can have full screen combat. So about that, there's actually a alternative to that, and that is in the form of, oh, whoops, silly me. One second. That is in the form of the passive lore bit display. So, I seem to have selected full screen. So the passive lore bit display, I think I've shown this before, but essentially what it does is it moves the lore bits to kind of the bottom left of the screen in a way that's a lot less obtrusive. So, as you can see, lore bits being displayed, but takes up a lot less of the screen, and more importantly, it's not taking up a part of the screen that's as common for enemies to be in. So as you can see, I can very easily, have plenty of space to look and see, and not have like Dorothy's face and the main lore bit display up there. So you can see, right? Like this, it makes it much harder to actually see what's going on here. But with the passive, it's kind of not so much in your place. The other thing is, well, it's an interesting idea to have it not be there in combat. The problem is that it's having a way to check for whether you're in combat or not would be a whole effort unto itself. And also, I don't think it's fair in the sense that there are some areas where lore bits are deliberately like placed between enemies. And I think if a player wants to read a lore bit in a dangerous area and take that risk, they should be able to take that risk, in my opinion. Like, far be it from me to allow to prevent players from making like good or bad decisions in a Souls-like game. Because in my view, like, part of the fun of a Souls-like game is that you can make dumb mistakes and it'll punish you heavily, but then you'll learn. Jay says, neat. I didn't know that was an option. You have missed fair few dev stream stuff. Fair enough. No worries. But yeah, no worries if you didn't know it was an option, because that's actually one of the many new features. Well, many things that'll be in the upcoming update to the Heartwell demo. So, the So basically everything you see here will be in the update to the Heartwell demo, as well as the 7 phases for the boss fights, all the new background art you see here, the fact that the fists now have a decently sized melee swipe, like that's way better than it was before. Also, agility actually affecting stamina regeneration rate. I mean, for that matter, even this, like this wasn't here before, this note. Like, you can really make that stamina regenerate a lot faster by investing in agility. So, lots of fun stuff coming. Like, honestly, off stream, I am just hammering away at bugs and, well, hammering away at, like, some bugs I found and other things that I want to try and get sorted before the next main update. The main thing that's holding things, preventing the update from coming out at this point, because, like, with the lore bit thing, it's, you know, it might be annoying if you can't read something while kind of running around, like, very quickly between SB and stuff, but it's still functional. However, one thing I have noticed is that some of the specials weren't working properly, and I think that had to do with how the save file information was being retrieved. So, to give you an example, when I was testing the 2nd phases for the boss fights, I was thinking to myself, you know, it'd be really useful to be using the surge staffs on the rocks, you know, that galvanizing gemstone special, since I liked using that against one of the boss fights even before the 2nd phases were even a thing. I figured, okay, I want to test this out. So I tried unlocking it while I was playing the game, and lo and behold, I didn't see the surge staffs buildup go up. And I'm like, that's not right. So I exit the game, reload the game, and it seems to work fine after that. And that leaves me very confused. What it was is sometimes in these equations, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's a short distinction. Whenever you recall a value from an array, you need an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and a z coordinate. All right, and that's represented by like these 3 values here. So in this case, you might have. Let me find one that's a bit simpler. You might have one that's an x coordinate, y coordinate, z coordinate, etc. But the distinction I'll draw out here is the z coordinate, since with the z coordinates, sometimes you notice I have a 1 here, and other times it's a save file number. There's a reason for that. So I know for certain that no matter how well I think I've balanced my weapons when I initially create them, they're going to need to be rebalanced. That's just a fact. Because when you have multiple weapons in a game, it's, especially with the amount that I want in Heartwell, it's going to be very easy to lose sight of how do these weapons compare to each other over time? Do they make sense? Are there like some really overpowered or unbalanced builds that can be created that causes a weapon to like be way better than its tier should be, or things like that? So, as a result of that, I decided early on that I wanted to make it so that any values that could directly affect weapons would be defined from a centralized area, so that if I needed to change it, I would only need to change it once, as opposed to having to manually edit the code for a particular weapon in every single frame that a weapon exists in. So in other words, right now we only have 3 frames that represent areas right now, the central well, the lower well, and depths. In the full game, there will be a lot more of these. And if it wasn't like in a centralized format, I would have to edit the code for a weapon in every single one of those frames, like 20 or more frames to rebalance a weapon, and that would just be a nightmare. So in my code, I've defined some values that are meant to just be static values that I can recall to represent different multipliers and such for the weapons. And that gives me one central location to edit them if I ever need to rebalance them. However, while that works fine for stat values, there are other values that need to be dynamic. Those are the ones that refer to save file numbers, and that's because different save files may or may not have different things active depending on what the player's progressed, how they've invested their stats, etc. The problem lies because, as you can see, this gets kind of complicated, even a single weapon can have tons of equations like this, it's really easy to mix up what should be a static value and what should be a value that is tied to a save file number. And as a result of that, sometimes there's a 1 here when there should be a save file number, or vice versa. And in those cases, it can lead to weird bugs like you level something up but the stat doesn't actually allocate, or you quit the game and come back on and suddenly things are working properly. Or in some cases, it just doesn't work at all, unless you're like on the first save file. So a thing I'll be doing off stream quite a bit is just I'm literally just going to take some time off stream to go like line by line for the rocks, the axe, the tomahawks, and the fist weapons, just to double check that all the actual specials are working correctly and updating the save code accordingly. So that's kind of like the main thing left, I'd say, before I do some test playthroughs, and then if those go well, upload the major patch for the Heartwell demo. So super excited for that. And then sometime after that would be the start of the Heartwell community challenges, but that's that'll be a subject for the future. Anyway, I've done a lot of talking here at the start chat, so why don't we I'm more than happy to continue talking, but for now, let's make sure we're at least doing some stuff with the Scythe. So the thought I had last stream was to have Dorothy actually kind of do a spinny spin with the Scythe to represent that she doesn't really understand how to wield it properly. However, me being a person who actually likes scythes as both a farming implement and as a tool in RPGs, and as someone who's actually like watched some videos about the medieval combat scrolls for using scythes, there is a part of me that actually wants to draw this correctly. So let's at least try it. Let's give ourselves 30 minutes and see if we can at least get like some kind of animation going where Dorothy's like actually kind of reaching across her body to indicate that she's actually bringing the scythe forward. So basically what we need to do is find some way to draw Dorothy's shoulder kind of being here. So I think the back one that will actually look fine. It's the front one that's going to be tricky. Yep. So while I'm working on that, what's new in your world, Jay? Do any modding recently? Jay says Dorothy Blade. Might make more sense with a hammer than a scythe if you want Dorothy to spin to be real. I mean, I think Dorothy spin could be fun, but I guess it's a question of which weapon would make the most sense on. And with the hammer, I mean, I think we already have a pretty decent hammer animation. I like the idea of hammers being more of a bonking kind of weapon, you know, thunk, as opposed to like spinning around. I mean, as funny as a Dorothy Beyblade would look. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dorothy Beyblade for scythes is always going to be the backup plan. But for now, let's not give up before we try, of course. Always try first. So, like I said, we'll want what I'm going to attempt to do is basically just kind of move this to the left. You know? We put some black lines there. That might actually work. Hold on. Chat. Is it all be one of the states where it's like I thought it would be hard and it actually ends up being simple? I feel so dumb. I feel so dumb. That's okay. Look at that, chat. We barely did anything, and it looks. Let's see what the. And we'll have to put that in the background, but. One second. I mean, obviously, Dorothy's not going to be holding, like, her hands together like that. It'll only the same thing, but honestly, think it looks... I think that front shoulder turn looks pretty good. Like, I genuinely thought this would have been a lot harder than I made it out to be. Jay says, no, I haven't touched mine in ages. You've been really busy with life for a while. Haven't had much free time. Ah, gotcha. That's perfectly understandable. Life can definitely get very busy at times. That's how I was feeling. I want to say it was last summer through that fall. I was super busy. I was traveling all the time. I was, I was traveling all the time. There was times where I was super stressed out, but I have found a happier medium now, and it's all work, and it seems to all be working out. And I wish you all the best through your busy times, Jay. Because there are definitely times where it can feel like you just don't get time to breathe, and those can feel awful. But one thing that helps keep me moving through is just knowing that it won't stay busy forever, because it can't. Sometimes things will be busy, and then other times things will be a bit more relaxed. And that's one thing that helps keep me doing. Jay says, you have a different Heartwell-related project you've been chipping away at. I might show you on the Discord later. Ooh, cool! I look forward to seeing what it's about. Yeah, is there anything you can say about it, or is it more like a secret that you want to be a surprise? Because I know one thing I'm looking forward to is definitely going to be well, obviously releasing the update, since this will be a pretty massive overhaul for the Heartwell demo. But the other thing I'm looking forward to is of course, the Heartwell community challenges. Now, I plan to give at least a couple of weeks between the release of the update, the demo updates, and the community challenges. One, so that I can set the infrastructure for the community challenges, and two, to make sure that people have enough time to just enjoy the update to the demo without feeling like pressured in any way. But I'm definitely looking forward to that, since I think it'll be fun to see people try to get like the best times under specific rule sets, and see whether or not they can compete with an author time. Let's see here. We have a Scythe. Scythe is over here. Alright, the only thing is that I need to move the handles to the other side for this to make any modicum of sense. Unless... No, that doesn't make sense. Okay. Actually, would it be possible to... Then how would I show spinning this? No, it would be like that. Okay, hold on. There it is. That's what we need. We need this. So we raise the scythe. Right now, chat, I'm literally like holding my hands as though I'm holding a scythe, just to try and get a sense of what the motion should be like. Okay. Holding it like this. Yeah, so my in this case, Dorothy's right hand should actually be further than her left hand, because her right hand's on the front handle. So that means that this goes about there. Jay says you want it to be a surprise. All right, sounds good. Well, I look forward to seeing the surprise when it's ready. I'm very much the same way with the second phases. Jay says you have to disappear now. Have fun scything. All right. Thanks, Jay. And thanks for dropping by. I hope you have a good rest of your night. Or I guess have a good rest of your day. Let's make that Scythe. I see. Hello, Twin. That's right. How's it going? Working on the same site from last time? Yes, Twin, I am. However, I will note that I was super concerned about trying to do like a cross-shoulder animation for Dorothy, but it turns out it's actually a lot simpler than I was making it out to be. Like, literally the solution was just to take the current side swinging animation and then just move this shoulder a little bit further and it looks fine. So that crisis is averted. So we will actually be able to animate the Scythe being used at least somewhat correctly. All right, that doesn't look right. Let's fix that. Yep. Oh, thanks, Gwen. I appreciate it. Trying my best. Yeah, like, no, seriously, like, it literally is that simple. Just kind of funny if you think about it, but it works. All right, so now for the backhand. I think I might want that. Right now I'm just trying to get the other hand in the correct position. Oh, actually, that might make it a bit easier now to think about, because think about the other one would just be behind that arm, so let's go over here, zoom in a bit. Yeah, because that would all be behind it. All we need is kind of a reach around animation. Yeah, so for this, it would actually be kind of more like, it's kind of like that. Yeah. Of course, we have to hide the other stuff. Alright, chat. First attempt at attempting to do a cross-scythe animation. What do you think? Just turn that off. So it's like this would be frame 1 up here. This would be frame 2 down there. Wait a second. That doesn't feel right here. So I'm holding my scythe like that. Reach around. No, the scythe would still be in front. Quincy's shot at. Ah, fair enough. There's our scythe, there's our scythe, there's the scythe. Doo, 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 doo. I guess the scythe would be kind of at more of a slight diagonal is the thing.
Alright. I'll tell you the truth.
Oh, hey Quint. So we are looking at this one. So frame 1 up here, frame 2 down here. I think, I'm not sure whether the scythe down here looks correct or if it should be a bit, you know what it is? I think that this scythe needs to be just a smidge further up on the body. So let's, we shift that perspective up. And then we... that.
They're very much alike.
Did the handle needs to be longer or just moved? No, I think it was just a moved thing. Not so much longer, because as you can see before, if I undo everything I just did, like that's what it used to look for. It looked kind of odd, probably because it'd be like you're holding the scythe kind of far from your body there. Whereas like this, I think that looks a bit better as you're swinging it around.
Alright. I'll tell you the truth.
That being said, if someone was really twisting their scythe around, okay, actually, wait a second. It just kind of dawned on me. The scythe would actually be behind the body at this point, because the other handle would be kind of like, I think, behind at this point. Does that mean, you know, something like? No, that's weird. I think I was on the right track the first time. You know, I think this is... maybe it's just the backhand needs to be adjusted slightly. But if we move that... delete that. Yeah. And that looks a bit better. And then I think the other thing is the weapon itself would be slightly angled. No, what do you think, chat? Does that look better than it did before? We are kind of swinging it around. Yes? Okay. Yeah, because I think the main thing is that you would be kind of swinging it down at an angle, so you wouldn't, it wouldn't be like flat straight on. Okay. Like that. Or like that. Also, I think like this, because it kind of looks like Dorothy's really putting her entire body into this strike, which makes sense, as the Scythe is not necessarily a light weapon. Cool. Well, that was definitely a process, but honestly, I'm much happier with that than Dorothy spin. Don't worry, I'm sure there'll probably be at least one weapon that'll allow us to do Dorothy Beyblade, but for now... this. You know, the other thing that's nice about this chat is that, like, the arm animations we were making for this, you know, just that kind of idea of really swinging all into it. Oh, Quinn asks, I think we discussed this, but is this a late game weapon? Great question. No, the Scythe is not a late game weapon. So the Scythe is actually a weapon that I would consider early mid game. So basically, it's like it's something that's gotten after Heartwell, but before the mid game, and generally expected to be at least theoretically obtainable before the mid game. So think of the Scythe like, if we're using Elden Ring terms, the Scythe would be like a weapon you'd find in Raya Lucaria. It's like, you know, perfectly acceptable, quite usable, you know, very, you know, solid choice, especially for that point in the game. But when you get later, you might want to swap it out for something that's even better, sort of thing, you know? It's like definitely completely usable even through the end of the game if you so chose, but you'd be better off, you know, when you get to the later game, trying to swap it out for, like, quote-unquote, better weapon, so to speak. Yeah, whereas the Fists and Rocks are kind of designed to encourage you to want to try all the other weapons. This would be more so like, you know, solid, but there's, you know, still better stuff out there. But anyway, what I was saying is, these arm animations we're making could be really useful for some other weapons in the future, potentially. It might help a lot with those animations. Yeah. I for one am excited because I feel like I was telling Jay earlier, Twin. Once I do like a pass through the through checking some of the special equations for the weapons in the demo, I'll probably at that point just start my test playthroughs, and if things go well from there, then update then upload the next Heartwell demo update. So definitely super looking forward to that. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it, chat? I'm trying to remember when was it that the Heartwell demo was released. I want to say it was like towards the end of 2023, and we've been working on this overhaul for more than a year. But I think it'll be well worth the wait. That's the animation. When it says really looking forward to the patch. Excellent. I'm glad. Yeah, it's always in front of the body. Okay. I'm trying to get a sense of how to animate this. Might be easier if I start with the right side first and then figure out the left side. Yeah, something like that. Me also realizing we'll need more space for these animations. Oh no. The Scythe is a larger weapon. All right. Now we've done that, we have... I say as I move the hair there. And Quinn says, this music piece has so much tension and light at battle is about to start. Oh yeah, definitely does. Definitely fun music to listen to while doing development work. I like music that makes me think. Helps keep me focused, I think. Do you like to listen to music when you're doing work, Quinn? Excellent. What kinds of music do you like to listen to? Because for me, it's usually stuff like this or video game music. Octopath Traveler especially has a great soundtrack. Would absolutely recommend. Maybe this is operatic. Her song's Land of the Fallen by Thurin. Ah, cool. I think I've heard that one before. Alright. Now to attempt to figure out how we're going to display this. Alright, so right now I'm just trying to... Oh, this is behind the head, that's right. Oh, unfortunate. I have to move this to, like, weapon effects or something. Alright, well that gets the effect of holding the Scythe, but it doesn't really do much for the shoulder. Okay, so if I'm holding it like this, so my wrist is kind of going that way, pointed outwards. Let's see, where is that shoulder normally? I see. This is our jam chat. One of my favorite songs to listen to when doing development work. Erosion by Drummer Boy. I think if we moved it one more to the left, it would actually fit. All right, get in there. Okay. Then down, up, yeah. Waiting for a reach around animation right now. I like this jam. Very 80s and 90s-esque. Now I think about it, do something like that. No. I think that works, chat. How do we zoom out a bit? Does it need to be a bit higher? Okay, actually, yeah. Now I'm thinking about it. Like, if I'm... So that fist should be at about eye level. It currently is not. We actually need to move it a bit higher. So... Maybe slightly backwards too. We could go with that, or we could go with... All right, chat, what do you think? 1 or 2? Now we're super zoomed in here. One or 2? I know it was about 1. I think I kind of like 1. You like 2 better? Really? Okay. So this one? Now something about this shoulder. Something about this shoulder just kind of looks a bit weird to me, like at this zoom level. I get that Dorothy's supposed to be kind of twisting her shoulder over there. Yep, so this is 2 zoomed in. And this is 1 zoomed in. Actually, just that one little dot has... You still like 2? So what do you like about 2, Quinn? Oh, dude. I've lost 2, so let's fix that. Our motion feels complete in 2. Alright. And 1, it's hard to realize they pitched an arm, yeah. Alright, I guess because we only have so many pixels to our left like this, let's I mean, I guess the arm would look like a kind of an L shape like that. The L shape looked a little jarring to me at first, but I guess, you know, if it's happening fast enough, it would be worth looking at. I don't know, just... Yeah, the larger perspective view, yeah. So what's weird to me is, like, if I'm... Or look at myself in a mirror, kind of out to the side, my arm would be a kind of an L, but it would be kind of more straight on. I guess we're kind of exaggerating, putting it back a bit. There's something... I don't know what it is. Oh. Is that literally it? Wait, then chat, did that fix it? I think what was missing for me was the shoulder. Like, it just kind of looked like the arm was just kind of there without the shoulder. But that slight adjustment kind of makes it look like there's a shoulder there. You know? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what was missing. You like this, chat? You think hell that was the shoulder. Yep. Okay. Cool. At least the good thing with this frame is that, one, we've, you know, got a new set of animations to work with, which is nice. The other is that we'll be able to just flip that one around for this animation, so that'll make it much easier. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Quinn says, Antomicx, do you think the use of AI for general public should be restricted until ethics guidelines are established in law? To prevent Cambridge Analytics like data stealing. So, my perspective on that is that data is already being taken, like, constantly by, like, trackers and stuff that are already deep in the internet. So that kind of data harvesting already exists, like with AI or not. I mean, it's very easy to see. You just like do a Google search or a Bing search or anything like that, and after a couple of searches, you'll start noticing ads that are like targeted based off of your searches. Like, it's already a thing, like even before the advent of AI. So I don't think that should be like a reason for restricting the access to AI. I mean, if anything, I think AI should be easily accessible to the public, because if it's not, then you just create essentially a two-tiered system where those who have access to AI are just have an advantage compared to those who don't. All right, but my point still stands, is that I think that AI should be at least at some level accessible to the general public, because it's the same thing with like libraries back in the day. Like for like the longest time, specific libraries to only be accessed by like people in the noble rank, or even if you could access it, you wouldn't understand how to read it, and that would be, that would be like a big limiting factor. Whereas nowadays, it is a lot easier for the general public to have access to the largest library in the world, that being the internet. So I think the same would go with AI. I think there should be, general access to AI. Now, that being said, ethics guidelines are very important, and I would think giving the public access to AI would actually be a means to help understand what kinds of ethics would need to be developed in the first place. That was my 2 cents on the matter, though. I mean, like with any piece of software, it's like you think you understand everything until the public gets its hands on it, and then they do things that you never imagined even trying. It's the same thing with like making a video game. You no amount of play testing in a closed environment is going to compare to just letting players get their hands on it and seeing what they come up with. Yeah, what's your 2 cents on the matter, Quint? Quinn says, you are concerned about the death of thinking. Okay. Go on, explain. Something like that. Alrighty. Let's move this over just to give us a little bit more space. It's already getting very tight in terms of available space. Yep. Weird happening. Oh, I see. move this over. Alright. Twin says, you do research. Your lab mates brainstorm with ChatGPT and it stores all the data so it can reference and source their ideas. Stereotypes was the idea was ChatGPT. Administration used ChatGPT to brainstorm stuff. But ChatGPT is a language model, so it's glorified chat. This means it stores data, recognizes speech patterns, and generates those, which means all the thinking is being shown to another user at the other end of the world. There's no thought privacy. Alright, my counterpoint is that there wasn't thought privacy to begin with because of how the internet already collects troves and troves of data. And the only way to get any kind of thought privacy is to either A, have some kind of server that's isolated from the internet, or B, simply to do everything offline. And, you know, with AI, it's the same kind of thing. Like, there are AI models that you can pay for and just use offline, and then that's that. Now, there's the argument that, well, wouldn't the software owner potentially gather data from that? But my point is that there are ways to get privacy with that kind of stuff. It just requires, I think, more investment and stuff along those lines. So, are you getting at a privacy question here, Quinn, or just the idea of having all this rapid thought generation? No, commercial AI still learns from your input. Yeah, but then my point is there could be demand for AI that just doesn't get that kind of info or is heavily restricted or things like that. Because, I mean, think of it this way. There are already, like, web browsers out there that market their privacy and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there are AI models that come out that are all about that kind of stuff. Well, no, it would still learn from you, but my point is that it wouldn't be necessarily sending the data back to some ether. The question of what's the tool being used for, right? I think we're in somewhere. Slowly. Slowly but surely. Alright, Quinn says, you are concerned with... You're concerned with science research and stuff, have stuff that's neat and all that. Herman also all the sectors are on that, as are not evolving fast enough as technology, and so thoughts stop thinking eventually and be reliant on these, AIs. Got there. This would be like... Alright, hey, welcome back, Quinn. What do you think of, I guess, this frame potentially for the start of the animation here? Still trying to think through just this particular shoulder here. Like that, like that, or something like that. Quinn says, I think, Antonis, that you are inspiring with your self-discipline and creativity. Oh, thanks, Quinn. I appreciate it. I try my best. So, still trying to figure out. I think this animation kind of looks good. Yeah. Does, like, yeah, that at the side, then you kind of lift it up. Alright, the third option. So you mean this one, Quinn? Or do you like, were you saying more like that? This would be 2. This would be 1. Oh. Oh, yep, with the white dot. So you mean this white dot right here? As it currently is? Okie doke. Alright. Now, Quinn, you're talking about the concern about stopping thinking that you'll eventually be reliant on this so-called AI. Oh, no, when the black line is broken. Okay, so, like... that. Like that. Oh, no. Yes, just like this? Okay. No, also a bit odd. Although, maybe. No, that's odd too. Okay, just leave it as is. Just leave that as is. All good. So anyway, regarding AI, Quinn, you mentioned that we as a society are not evolving as fast as technology. You know, agreed. Technology grows exponentially, whereas humans can only move so fast. And so thoughts and intellectual prowess, you cease to exist, perhaps. And then you'll stop thinking eventually and be reliant on these so-called AI. So question, Quinn. Are we reliant on faucets? On running water? Asking a simple question. Are we? Is not the same. Well, is it, Quinn? Because think about it. Running water, as we know it, with all the minerals we put into it to make it safe to drink, and consistently. Oh, so we're not relying on running water. All right. So, are you saying, like, are you saying we don't need water to live necessarily? But do we need water to function as a society, though? But you still needed water in some capacity, and you were still using technology of some kind, in this case a well, in order to obtain the water from a more consistent source. Is that fair to say? Is that fair to say? Quinn says, are you suggesting we generate thinking from a technological source? That's not what I'm getting at right now. I'm just getting at some fundamentals about, changes in technology. Like, is it fair to say that over time, we as a society have gotten used to and in fact become reliant on sources of technology that allow us to get water from a stable source or central location, as opposed to simply going with wherever the ocean and rivers happen to be at a particular time? Yes, we need technology to use water as a resource. Exactly. All right, so I'm glad we agree on that point. Now let's take that a step further and think about what I was talking about earlier about libraries. You know, libraries still exist, even in written form, but you know, the internet also exists. And in this day and age, is it fair to say that we are reliant as a society on the internet? Like, in order to succeed in a capacity nowadays as a society, is it fair to say that we need the internet? Or that we've become reliant on the internet? Whereas before, you know, would it not have been fair to say that we were reliant on libraries? The resource internet and libraries help curate its information. That is true, but consider this. The internet, for all intents and purposes, is a more sophisticated, advanced, faster, and vaster library. Is it not? What's more, it acts, as sophistication goes, it's not merely for storing and retrieving information, it's also for sharing information. That's something that a traditional library doesn't necessarily do. Agree, or library. All right, exactly, and that's a resource. In this case, storage, management, and well, knowledge transfer, if you will. All right, and that goes all the way back to the time of when we were in trees, because there was still the desire to transmit that that information on like cave drawings and stuff. All right. So the point is, there are these leaps in technology that are accomplishing some central human function. All right. And we grow reliant on that technology over time. But no, but here's the thing, Twin. We're talking about resources, all right? In this case, we're defining resources as water's a resource, all right? The ability to store information, you know, going to the internet, and retrieve it accessibly, search for it, query for it, that's a resource. So I would argue that with generative AI, it's still a resource, because what is the resource? It depends on what the AI application is, but ultimately the resource is labor, and more specifically, information-based labor, or other words, the labor that goes into thinking about things or to computing things or stuff like that. I mean, consider this. Way back when, chat, there's a bot. Prepare the spam emotes, chat. Prepare the spam emotes. We have a bot to take care of. Give me 1 second, chat. Spam your emotes. Be gone, bot. Alrighty. Apologies about that, chat. But I appreciate the emote spam. So what I was getting at there before, chat, is that like in the past, when we were like when we were doing mathematics at a rudimentary level, we might count on our fingers, maybe even like draw in the sand or in the dirt to keep track of numbers. But at a certain point, we developed tools to help us do not only remember numbers, but also calculate numbers and store numbers more efficiently. Think of things like abacuses, for example. All right. Now, the abacus didn't destroy humankind, but it definitely affected how we kept track of numbers. And then over time, eventually, we came up with different forms of calculators. You know, at first they required like pretty sophisticated systems to do these. Think like the machine that solved Enigma. But eventually, we created handheld calculators. And now there are even apps on our phones that can do calculations. Like millions upon billions of calculations in a second, you know? It's just ultimately an extension or development of a resource. In that case, calculation and mathematical processing. All right? So I would argue that AI, or what we're referring to as generative AI, or just as different forms of AI, is simply in the same vein as looking at the resource of information in generation. Now, that does beg the question of, like you were mentioning about intellectual no, that was wrong. All right, Quinn, so why is it wrong? Tell me what the difference is. By all means, like, if you agree with everything I've said up to this point, there should be no debate. like seriously, think about it. Like, if you're... So, by all means, enlighten me. Why am I wrong that this technology is different from all the other instances that I have laid out before you? Because in each of those instances, there's come to points where we have become reliant on technology that is related to these resource managements. Quinn says, generative AI does not reason based on information and draw conclusions or curate information. Counterpoint, neither does the information we spit into Microsoft Excel in order to prove calculations. They're actually not exact calculations. They're very precise estimates. Same thing with simulations that we use for trying to assess whether certain things will occur in an engineering setting or in a safety setting, stuff like that. Generative AI is a large language model, so it's not all reasoning, but it's copying your speech pattern. I understand that, but speech generation is also a resource. Consider this. Are you familiar with the YouTube channel Yantha? So if you have an isolated AI instance, and you keep telling it, all right. We have all that. That's there. That's there. All right, we're making progress. Now we need to move this one over here. Quinn says, the hen is if you tell an AI, a language AI, the hen is blue over and over again, and casually mention hen eggs are beige, ask what color the hen eggs are, they'll say they are beige and blue. All right. So you know what my response to that is, Quinn? It's that's called using the tool incorrectly. To rely on a language AI to do all thought that goes into things and assume it is truthful is essentially the same as to rely entirely on simulations in order to conduct calculations for how something will work in the real life without ever actually doing any real world testing to confirm it, and then doing the thing and just hoping it works. The result is very likely a disaster. And that's just because you are not understanding, like, the person doing that is not fully comprehending the limitations of the tool and using it properly. The same can be said even for the internet, because with the internet, you know, as much as an information trove as it is, if you don't understand how to parse that information correctly, you know, determine whether your sources are accurate or not, things like that, you can go down a rabbit hole and get, like, a wrong answer very, very, very quickly. Like, I understand you're pointing out the limitations of a tool, Quinn, but again, that's just the limitation of a tool. It's someone misunderstanding how to use the tool. That is not the same as saying, oh, but this tool is different, this tool will ruin humanity. No, humanity has ruined itself in times of sticks and stones, and humanity will continue to ruin itself, because we're humans, we make mistakes. But eventually, like anything else, it evens out, and then the technology becomes the norm. And you know, so to that, I would say that even just the idea that it's generating ideas is also not quite correct. It is generating language constructs that can be interpreted by humans to be ideas. Now, that might seem like a lot of lexicon, and it is, but there is a difference. It's recognizing and understanding that the AI itself isn't actually smart in the sense of understanding what these different things are. It's just going off of pattern recognition at a mass scale. But even with that limitation, much like the periodic table and many other things in humankind's, you know, developed science, there are approximations that are functional and helpful in specific contexts. This is why SAD was against AI films. Actually, even that isn't entirely true. SAD isn't against AI films completely. Rather, they want to make sure that the rights of the workers are protected and that their IP or intellectual property, particularly if they are, you know, more well-known actors, but even just in general, are protected. Alrighty. Let's just grab that. Hey, Gwen, welcome back. So, I think we were talking about AI and the sad Afra strike. So, the thing about that is, when the strike was all said and done, AI was not, like, outright banned. That wasn't the point of the strike. The point was to make sure it's measured and protecting the rights of workers. So, the settlement they eventually came to was that, essentially, movie companies could not use AI as a replacement for actors without their consent. 2, they could not force digital artists in particular to use AI or to replace them with. Rather, they said that AI is simply a tool that may be used at the artist's discretion. Well, hold it. It depends on the context, Quinn. Like, while it is my personal opinion that AI should never replace someone's employment, depending on the project you're developing, you could utilize AI tools to essentially remove some labor depending on what it is, what level of quality you need and such. For example, the example I like to bring up a lot is YMFA's Top Gear parodies, because those videos use AI-generated voice mimicry, if you will, of the main characters from the TV show Top Gear. And that's an example of using AI to effectively replace buying what would be basically either training oneself to have the voice talent for that, or finding someone who could do those vocal ranges with using AI. But the way it's handled is some of the AI voices, some of the voices are AI generated, and the others are actually clips from some of the Top Gear shows. So, well, no, because the thing is, you say it's different, but consider this. If not for that capability to mimic the voices well enough, would YMFA have been able to make these parodies to the degree that they want to? The short answer is no, they would not have. They would have been severely limited, so it would have affected their ideas. Yep, YMFA still wrote the script and the screenplay, but that's in this example. There's actually a different example of Twin. So, YMFA actually did a Dark Souls 3 quote-unquote tutorial video, but basically the gimmick for that video was he had the AI write the, how-to guide for Dark Souls 3. And then they used their knowledge of glitches to try and match exactly what the AI script said, even when it divulged into nonsense. And that made the video very entertaining. But it would not have been nearly as... But, part of the idea behind it was that the script was AI generated. If the script was not AI generated, that idea just would not exist, because it would not have... it wouldn't have made as much sense. Alright, I'm just going to write this really bad guide to Dark Souls 3. No, that would not have been nearly as entertaining. It's the fact that the script was AI generated that made it so funny. So, my point is, again, depends on the context, but ultimately, is the tool right for the job? Right? That's ultimately the question that needs answered. Let's be the questions that need answered. Should the Scythe blade be up or down here? Up or down? Okay, so actually it should be down. And this should be up. Yeah. Quinn says, not for sectors that value intellectual property like that, not for medical diagnosis to some extent. Well, again, it depends on the context, doesn't it? Like, I think there are use cases for AI in all those sectors, but it's a question of how it's being used. Like, it's not the tool, it's how it's used. So if you're trying to use that to just outright replace the thoughts of scientists, engineers, things like that, and just like rely on that completely and not people, you're just asking for trouble at that point. You're asking to make mistakes and have bad things happen. But if you have it as like a tool that can be used to help in certain situations, perhaps to help brainstorm, perhaps to throw ideas at the wall, perhaps to try and help find patterns, or at least get ideas to try and figure out patterns to locate, then yeah, that could be helpful. And there might be some efficiencies there. I can tell you one efficiency would be just using AI as a means to help with summarizing things. Because think about it, like in those sectors that you mentioned, how much time is spent writing? A lot, right? And when you're writing, you're not doing the stuff that those sectors are meant to be doing. So like with doctors, for example, you're not conducting a test if you're writing a report, right? You're not thinking about stuff if you're doing the write-up for a report. So having like an AI writer to help at least get a rough draft together that you can then fine edit to be accurate, there's an efficiency there. You know? That gives the smart people more time to do the smart things. Okay? No, Ryan, for AI, you'll miss so much nuance. But no, what I'm saying is not using AI to completely replace writing. Rather, using AI to create a rough draft so you get kind of the gist of it, but then you edit it down to be in your style and such. In other words, think of it like... that it's just defense waving arms to know. But no, hear me out, Quinn. Consider this. Like I was saying, like scientists and doctors have to do a lot of writing. But when they're writing, they're not doing research. They're summarizing research. They are trying to express research, but they're not doing research. And you have a tool that is effectively the same as having an intern who is not very experienced and telling them, all right, here's what happened. Here's the SparkNotes things. Give me a rough draft. All right? A scientist or doctor worth their salt is not going to just accept the intern's write-up at that point with no review. Of course not. They're going to review it. They're going to edit it, and then they'll have their paper. Right? It's an important research because it organizes thoughts and allows scientists to think. I won't disagree there. But when something is repetitive, especially, in situations like that, that's where AI or automation is at its best. Because it helps, essentially offset the mundane or repetitive task such that folks can focus on more important things. Just as automation in a factory can help, the machinists focus more on stuff that requires more human control or more human thought, or setting up another machine. Again, there's balance to be had here in everything, but to just outright flatly deny it, say, no, we shouldn't consider this because XYZ, it won't make people think. No, use the tool correctly. Don't use it to replace thought, but don't deny that the tool exists either. That's dumb. Alright, so what we need now is this at a angle. So what angle would this be? So kind of swiping across, aren't we? It would actually be behind Dorothy, wouldn't it? Twin says, I see a Dedenne. I have not pulled it open, but I'll take a look at it later. I at least know what a Dedenne is. It's a Pokemon. What I think is this should actually be at a bit of an angle. See if I can get something that looks kind of right. Quinn says, good chat. Tom's selected to dive deeper into nuance tonight. Hey, thanks, Quinn. I really appreciate it. It was a fun chat. I hope you have a good rest of your night. It should be the diagonal one. Let's see. I'm trying out on stream here. Maybe a few more minutes. I'm not sure if I'll finish this particular animation, but I will try to. Going. Right now, just trying to figure out what the scythe should look like. So. This might actually be a time for it to be horizontal now I think about it. Okay, let's see here. That'll actually work for like the side, kind of sideways at that point. Actually, just like that, then. Now it should be the opposite direction of the thing, so. Around. Very good. Alright, so right now, chat, we're just working on where to put the arms. Go from there. Okay. We will get this done. a little bit, but I think I got it. Cool. Well, chat. It did take a little bit, but then we finally got it. Just move some of this stuff. Yeah. Look at that, chat. We have our Scythe animations. Look at them. They're glorious. There. Is that a bit saturated? Sure, but I think it'll help convey it a bit. Yeah, let's go with that. Alright, I think that'll do for now, chat. So we got the Scythe all animated. We're kind of going back and forth on whether I want that there or not, since technically it would be that length, but... I'm just trying to have a quirk of how it lines up. So it's more flat though. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. Alright. Well, we got our side animations all made. And I'll wrap it up for tonight's stream. So happy pasta this over. We'll work on the bow next. So yeah. Still took a while, but definitely was as easier than expected. Considering that we had to start with some new arm animations. And those new arm animation segments could be potentially useful for other weapons in the future, so that's nice too. Oh, I think we'll wrap it up from here though, chat. If you're watching on Twitch, feel free to stick around for raid. But if you're watching on YouTube and you like what you saw, please consider subscribing on YouTube. It's free to subscribe on YouTube and watch YouTube around there. It's the right way to show support. If you're watching YouTube, I've been Amazing Night.